Hi, welcome back to another advocacy update. I'm Jen and this is Cory from MOAA's Government Relations team. And today we want to just chat about the NDAA because we are really coming down to the wire. I think it's going to be December this week.
Yes, we're hitting not a lot of time and a lot at stake.
A lot of stuff to do, yeah. We've got a continuing resolution, so we're not really going to focus on appropriations right now. But let's talk National Defense Authorization Act. What's happening with it right now?
Yep, so right now we've passed that for the last 62 years, and hopefully this will be the 63rd year of getting it done, but like we said, there's not a lot of time. So the state of play with that is that we've got the conferees named, which is a big step forward for both the House and the Senate side. And those are the people that ultimately, the sticky issues at stake, they're going to be the ones, the members on the House and Senate side, that work through them.
All right, so the NDAA is a great vehicle for MOAA to get across some of the things that we're working for military families. And some of those things are included in the House and Senate versions. Some of them are actually included in both, which is great.
Yes,
what are some of those things?
Fortunately, our advocacy and action issues made it in. And one that we worked very hard on together was restoring BAH. So there's a standalone bill that we've been pushing. But ultimately, we realized that just given the cost of it, it's going to require an incremental approach. And that's what the House version of the NDAA did. So what it calls for is a 1% restoration, or reabsorption, as they call it in the bill, bringing it back to 96%, 1% increase from 95. So getting that language in and getting that conference is going to be really important to helping move that entire initiative forward. But there's more.
Yeah. The other advocacy and action priority that we talked about was there was a recent cut to TRICARE pharmacy benefits. And it really reduced the number of pharmacies that people could go to, especially in rural areas. And so what we asked for during AIA was just an independent review. Yep. How is this actually impacting beneficiaries? And we were really pleased to see that in both the House and the Senate version, there is a request or a required report on this. So that's great. What else are we looking at?
Okay, so every year pay is the big thing that we're watching. So
wait, what's the pay raise going to be?
So 5.2% this year.
Okay.
So by virtue of Congress not taking any action, that's how we actually get this done. So no news is good news in a way for this. But this is something that we're always going to make sure that we hammer because that's such a critical component to make sure that ultimately pay isn't eroded because the employment cost index, ECI, is just keeping parity. So while it's a pay raise, really it's just keeping service members at the current standard of living.
But the House version contains a little different approach to pay and compensation. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yep. So what the House version does is it actually does a targeted pay raise.
Which we've seen in the past.
Right. There have been many years, especially during the surge and different times where there were recruiting issues. We've seen that targeted approach for areas that needed help. And what the House version does is it does a targeted pay raise for the E1 to E6 grades, especially for those earlier years when they're in a really tough financial situation. And the good news there is that it's also in the House appropriations as well. So there's the potential to see significant increase to standard of living for our junior service members.
Talking about standard of living, let's just quickly talk about the basic needs allowance, which I know I've talked about a lot in the past. We're very pleased that the House version includes a provision to exclude basic allowance for housing in the calculation for eligibility, which would be great because right now less than 3,000 people are actually getting that support.
Right. And how good is something like that
if no one can use it?
A lot of the books needs to be actually implemented.
Absolutely.
And that's very concerning.
Unfortunately, the Senate side does not have that. So we know that has been a sticky provision in the past that they have fought about, but we're remaining hopeful. There was actually a letter that was just sent out by several members of Congress, both in the House and Senate, urging support for the BAH to actually be removed.
Exactly. And just a couple other things that I want to make sure that we highlight is that the preservation of the earned burial benefits is also included in language to make sure that there's a path forward because ANC will eventually run out of space, and now is the time to begin thinking about it.
ANC is?
Arlington National Cemetery, thank you. And then the last thing is the 180-day rule to ensure that those that want to take off the uniform and become a DoD civilian have a clear path to that.
Which right now they can't because,
Right.
and they can't just at certain GS levels. What this would do is allow them to move into a GS 13 position and below, which takes advantage of all the skills that they developed over their career in the military, and doesn't leave that 180 days to lag. So they have to
Exactly.
come
Who
up
wants
with
to wait
something
around
else.
half a year for a potential to become employed? Most
Exactly.
people are going to find a job elsewhere, and then unfortunately, they might not come back.
So now we know that we're running short on time. That is a big concern
Right.
because the Congress goes on recess December 15th, right?
Yep.
All right, but we're optimistic because even though the conferees were just named, there's been a lot of work going on in the background.
Right. The importance of the professional staff working behind the scenes to pre-conference can't be understated. So a lot of the issues have been worked out at this point, and we've been working to interject our point of view across the way. So we sent a letter back in August highlighting what we deem is important, and that carries a lot of weight.
Fantastic. And then on Thursday, General Kelly's actually going to be going to a VSO roundtable hosted by Leader Jeffries, which is a great opportunity for us to reinforce the things that we definitely want to see in this NDAA cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. So every chance you can get, it's important to be hammering the importance of the NDAA and passing it for the 63rd year.
So as we get closer to having an NDAA, what are some things that our listeners or our members can do to get engaged and help move this process along?
Right now, it's critically important that you make your voice heard. We can't let up the pressure, and we need to make sure lawmakers understand how important the NDAA is to getting done before they go home. Use our Legislative Action Center. Make sure you're signed in and sending out calls to action. And if you want the latest, make sure you're subscribed to MOAA's newsletter, subscribe to this series. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.